I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our combined Operation Freedom Briefing and Dave versus the MSM series that we have been doing during our most recent election cycle. At this point, we're not going to gloat. We are going to be happy. Because on November 5th, 2024, our constitutional republic took an enormous, gigantic step to becoming saved. I truly believe, and this isn't hyperbole, I truly believe, because I have a pretty good track record as it relates to history, because my mom was the best history teacher on the face of the planet as far as I'm concerned, and many other people are concerned. We took a gigantic step toward the resurrection of our constitutional republic on November 5th. So today's presentation is entitled The Victorious People, Freedom-Loving People, Stuffed, the Globalist Cult. Fact. Some folks have said to me since the election, Dave, we should gloat. We should extend our hand. Well, okay. There's nothing wrong with a little gloating after all what we've been through. And folks say over the past 4 years. No. It's more than that. Actually, it's really, I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, since the day Ronald Reagan left office in January of 1989. Because even during the first Trump administration, our rights, our constitutional republic, was constantly under attack. Let's face it, the first Trump administration was beyond undermined by the whole Russia collusion hoax and all that, and every other globalist fabricated operation to undermine our constitutional republic and your and mine and every American's and frankly every person of the world's freedom. So it's not just the past 4 years. Don't let them kid you. It's been 35 years. And the cult, the reason why they're so panicked is because they fear what's coming. And what's coming is not violence. No, because we're peaceful as opposed to the other side, the cult side. We're peaceful. But we adhere to the Constitution and the rule of law. Not a subverted rule of law that's used in a fashion that is oppressive as we have been ongoing for 35 years. But a fair and judicious rule of law. Before the election, Elon Musk said the following: I've never been materially active in politics before, but this time I think civilization as we know it is on the line. He got a lot of heat for that, but he was right on target. It was on the line. Still is. But boy, we sure stepped back off that. Well, we were actually like a Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote cartoon. We were over the edge of the canyon, just dangling there while Roadrunner was beep, 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 beep. And through the grace of God, because it was divine intervention, just as it was divine intervention on J13 in Butler, PA, God reached out and pulled our country back to terra firma, firm land. Musk went on, if we want to preserve freedom and meritocracy in America, then Trump must win. And that he did. Now, what they are hoping, what our adversaries are hoping, the cult, the globalist cult, the deep state, the New World Order crowd, the criminal international banking syndicate, the shadow government. They're all the same. Bunch of totalitarian thugs. They're hoping is that we will just be satisfied with that electoral victory. And we'll go back on our couches and keep, what time is the game on? What happened on The Bachelor? What's going on with The Voice? Is American Idol on yet? Yeah. What are they doing on the Food Channel? We can't do that. That doesn't mean you can't take a little, little vacation, mental vacation, and watch whatever you want. But no, they want you mesmerized to their boob tube and their bought and paid for media outlets, be it print or electronic. No. The game is just beginning. Our game. Our game, and on the offense of our game. The cult doesn't know how to play defense, which is why they're panicked and they're desperate. After the election, Elon Musk said, quote, "The American people have made it absolutely clear that they utterly reject the current ruling class, the globalist cult. Radical reform of government is what they want." Yeah. And not just government. Our constitutional republic, the restoration of our constitutional republic that the globalist cult, where they had an R or D after their name, tried to dissolve. Or as their little middle level, don't think upper level, middle level puppet, Barack Obama said, transformationally change the United States. Yeah. Into a communist state. That was the goal. It was. That's not hyperbole, it's fact. Just look at their operations, what they put in place and what they tried to keep pushing with their fascism. So when you boil it all down, for the past 35 years, with some little bright lights of freedom during the Trump first term, although they were squashed any time they started to spark up. But not this time, I don't think. But for 35 years, we've been in the F around, right? F around and find out. Yeah, well, it's been 35 years of effing them around. And now we've entered a new phase, the finding out phase. Yeah. And that's why the cult is panicked and desperate. So the fundamental component of winning a war is knowing who your enemy is. Identifying them, knowing how they think, knowing what their goals and objectives are, not only knowing how they think, being able to anticipate what they're going to do next. Identifying and negating the enemy being the globalist cult, is imperative to accomplish an overwhelming victory. We cannot fall into complacency or so busy patting each other on the back that we lose the war. Because if you think they're just going to pack up and go away and say, well, that was it. No. And you see, folks, I believe that they're going to institute a multi-chaos type of approach to undermine our freedom-based efforts. Now, I believe their chaos operations that they had planned going into the election and on election day itself were thwarted, and we should thank the freedom contingent behind the curtain. But these evildoers, and they are evil, not an overstatement, are not done. And I think you're going to see a several tier approach of them. They're going to try to create some uprisings on the streets. We recently saw this, was the day after the election in Chicago. Obviously, this had been planned long in advance, where several hundred protesters had all the right signs written up, all the same, and it was staged before the election. And we're going to see more of that. And maybe even a bit of escalation of that. But if the freedom contingent behind the curtain is as successful as they were before the election on election day, we might not see a lot of that. We'll see some. And undoubtedly, we're going to see it after the inauguration. I've been quoted as saying, and I get a lot of heat for this, that when we look back on this time period in years to come, we're going to say, getting to election and getting the more valid responses we got during the election as far as results, we're going to look back at that and say, that was tough, but the easier part of the part from getting from election day to inauguration day, and from inauguration day for the months and time period to come after that. That's going to be the hard part, because that's where they're falling back. Their lines are falling back, and they're falling back to those time periods. Up to inauguration day and after inauguration day. So we have to be prepared. So they're going to unleash some chaos on the streets. They are going to unleash, because the cult always benefits out of war. They get more power, control, and financial resources. They're going to escalate issues internationally, Middle East. There's other theaters, Ukraine, Taiwan. They're going to unleash some chaos internationally. But where the real chaos is going to come, I believe, and I hope to be proven wrong on this, is in the financial system. I believe they have prepositioned themselves to protect themselves as they bring down the financial system. So as it comes down, the vast public around the world comes running to them and says, "Save us." And in the process, they just enrich themselves. And it's not like we haven't been given the heads up on this before. I did a little historical search of folks outing who our enemy really is and how sinister they really are. Napoleon. And you wonder why he got banished, exiled. Quote, when a government is dependent upon bankers for money, they and not the leaders of the government control the situation. Since the hand that gives is above the hand that takes. Money has no motherland. Finances are without patriotism and without decency. Their sole object is gain. End quote. Yeah. A couple hundred years ago, he was telling us about the globalist cult, the globalist syndicate, the deep state, the criminal international banking syndicate, the shadow government. He's telling you. Edward Bernays, another globalist, in 1928, probably the most notorious propagandist in the world, not just at the time, but even today. Here's what he said, quote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation," and this is what the cult does, "of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in the democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power in our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct, or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind. End quote. And that's what's been going on for hundreds of years, but they upped their game in the past 35. With H.W. Bush and Clinton and W. and Obama and Biden and everything they did to undermine the first Trump administration. But there are other historical figures that have also told us about what to be wary of. Andrew Jackson, 1830s, revealed that there were deceitful men operating in the shadows with their greedy agendas prevailing over what was best for the people. He stated, quote, and by the way, in President Trump's first term, he had a portrait of Andrew Jackson just to the left of the resolute desk where he sat in the Oval Office. My guess is Andrew's going to make another appearance. Biden had to get that down because of this statement. Quote from Andrew Jackson, quote, "Gentlemen, I too have been a close observer of the doings of the Bank of the United States. I have been watching you for a long time and am convinced that you have used the funds of the bank to speculate in the breadstuffs of the country. When you won, you divided the profits amongst you, and when you lost, you charged it to the bank, to the people. You tell me that if I take the deposits from the bank and annul its charter, I shall ruin 10,000 families. That may be true, gentlemen, but that is your sin. Should I let you go on, you will ruin 50,000 families, and that would be my sin. You are a den of vipers and thieves. I have determined to rout you out, and by the eternal, I will rout you out." End quote. Yet, when I first went on the radio, now over 14 years ago, on October 31st, 2010, I spoke about the criminal international banking syndicate, the New World Order crowd. I was labeled a conspiracy theorist. No, might be conspiracy. But it's conspiracy reality that we have been told about for hundreds of years if just people had listened. And then you wonder why you were never really taught history in your school or throughout your educational experience. Because they don't want you cognizant of what these historical figures said. I owe my awakening to my mom. She used to say, history textbooks are fine to look at, but they're really not to be believed. You got to do your own research to find out what the history really is. More history that you haven't been exposed to. James Garfield was the 20th President of the United States of America. He served from March 1881 until September 1881. That seems awfully quick, 6-month presidency. That's because he was assassinated. Why was he assassinated? Well, he was assassinated very soon after he made this remark. Quote, "Whoever controls the volume of money in our country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. When you realize that the entire system is very easily controlled one way or another by a very few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate, end quote. They couldn't have that. Oh, no. No. And one of the perpetrators of these crimes, because in 1913, there was the implementation of the income tax. There was the implementation of making it so that senators were elected and not appointed through state legislatures. And in addition, the Federal Reserve came into being because of globalist Woodrow Wilson. After he did that, about 6 years after this, after he instituted the oversaw the creation, at the behest of his globalist handlers, of the Federal Reserve. And in a nutshell, the Federal Reserve took over the money printing capabilities of the United States government. It's a big deal. They got the power, all the power, in 1913. Which is why Ron Paul has not been a real popular dude amongst the globalists, because he's talking about "and the Fed." Interesting that there's now chatter, that Elon Musk has been talking to Ron Paul about joining the team. Dropped a couple papers. Hold on. Sorry. Woodrow Wilson said the following, quote, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly," this is 6 years after he signed off on the Federal Reserve, "I have unwittingly ruined my country." I don't believe that's the case. He knew exactly what he was doing. "A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men." Where have you heard that before? "We've come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." Yeah. Thank you, Woodrow Wilson. He knew what he created. And he knew he sold out the country. And we're still, and this is the ramifications that we're dealing with today. Although, they got a shot in the chops on November 5th of 2024. And when you speak about these banking families, and I've named them before, but it bears repeating to name them again because I'm unaware of anybody else who really talks about this in the independent media, surely not in the bought-off lamestream fake media. The families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Lazars, the Pinkeys, the Warburgs, the Loebs, and at the very top of the pyramid, the Payseur, Payseur family. Now, lest you think I'm laying some heavy wood on these banking families, I want to take you to David Rockefeller's autobiography. And here's what he said in his memoir. Quote, David Rockefeller. Quote, "Some even believe we, the Rockefeller family, are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States. Characterize my family and me as internationalists and of globalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, a one world, if you will. If that is the charge, I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it." Unquote. Yeah. Yep. Good old Rocky there, huh? H.L. Mencken said, quote, "The most dangerous man to any government is the man who's able to think things out. Without regard to the prevailing superstitions and taboos, almost inevitably, he comes to the conclusion that the government he lives under is dishonest, insane, and intolerable," end quote. In other words, they're psychopaths. Exactly what I've been telling you for years. You know, we saw this during the French Revolution. I mean, we've talked about this before on this platform, but the Jacobins, right? When the French Revolution happened, the Jacobins stepped in and they were psychopaths. And they lasted for, I think it was less than 2 years. And finally, the people got fed up with all their black is white and white is black and upside down, much like we've lived through the Jacobins over the past 35 years with an intermittent hiatus in there for 4 years, but that was tempered with their operations to undermine the first Trump administration. But just as all of a sudden, like that, the people turned on the Jacobins for their upside-down treatment of society, it happened again. My mom, the history teacher. Dave, history, quote, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme," end quote. Well, we had another rhyming event, November 5th. Very similar to what happened with the Jacobins at the end of the French Revolution. And the reason why this time the cult was blocked is because of the internet. Now, granted, there's still immense censorship. This video will be censored heavily on YouTube, on Rumble. The Global Engagement Center of the State Department is still working their operations on people like me and my content of blocking overarching umbrellas so that people don't know about it, that it's hidden. The fact that you're here watching it means you've survived 90% of the roadblocks, 95% of the roadblocks they've put in place, which is why it's critical for you to take this information, this video, and network it to all those you know and love. Because my guess is if you ask them if they watch this video, they have never heard 99% of what I'm speaking about. Maybe 100%. But that's the key. And none of this is happening. And what we've been through over the past 36 years, too many people pass it off as, what a terrible set of circumstances, Dave. What a terrible set of coincidences. You know what? All these people are incompetent. No. We didn't get here with the very close to complete destruction of our constitutional republic because of a bad set of coincidences, it being an accident, people being incompetent. No. It was all planned. It was all willful by the very people that historically we have been told about. Napoleon, Garfield, Bernays, and even the Rockefellers who admitted to it. They're, quote, proud of it. A political commentator, Gary Barnett. Concerning the state, there are no accidents, no coincidences, and no national emergencies or threats. All is planned. Planned by the globalist cult. Once again, everything in politics and government is planned in advance, is not accidental, any coincidence, natural or organic, as all is staged in one way or another to either affect a certain outcome or cover up another. Believe nothing in the mainstream or government, trust nothing, question everything, and never accept any reports unless you can verify the real facts in order to find the truth. To quote I.F. Stone, quote, all governments are run by liars and nothing they say is to be believed. Speaking of believe, John Schwartz, an independent journalist, penned the following. Quote, unless you believe we're governed by shape-shifting space lizards, your darkest suspicions about how the world operates are likely an underestimate. Yes, there is an amorphous group of unelected corporate lawyers, bankers, and intelligence and military officials who form an American, quote, deep state, end quote, setting real limits on the rare politicians who ever try to get out of line. Right? I mean, look, Kennedy got out of line in 1963. Right? And put him in a car, no protection, in Dallas. Kaboom. How did he get out of line? Well, a number of reasons. One, he didn't give the CIA the air support when they invaded the Bay of Pigs. Called it off. Not good. Well, from the CIA. That was a reason. Two, he was talking about getting the money printing capabilities back away from the feds, from the Federal Reserve, and internalize it, bring it back into the Department of Treasury, and to back the currency with hard assets. In this case, he was talking about silver. Oh. Yeah. He was pulling us out of, and didn't want us to escalate into Vietnam, and he was pulling back the advisors. Well, that was going to affect their money laundering operations because hundreds of billions of dollars were laundered through that Vietnamese military operation. The military-industrial complex didn't like that. They don't like peace. That's why they don't like Trump. They don't like peace because out of war, they get more power, control, and financial resources. It's their playbook. Money supply. Didn't give air support to CIA. Oh, by the way, with the CIA, Kennedy also promised to, quote, shatter it into 1,000 pieces and had fired its kind of figureheads, Dulles. And then he was pulling out advisors and refused to escalate into Vietnam. Plus, he also wanted to limit the use of, or limit the number of countries that had nuclear weapons, and in particular, in the Middle East. That wasn't well received either. John Schwartz goes on. They do collaborate with and nurture their deep state counterparts in other countries to whom they feel far more loyalty than their fellow citizens. The minions of the deep state hate and fear even the mildest moves toward democracy and fight against it any means available to them. They're not all powerful and don't get exactly what they want, but on the issues that matter most, they almost always win in the end. And while all of this is mostly right there in the open, right in our faces, discernible by anyone who's curious and has a library card or can do a search on the internet, well, if you don't go looking, you'll never hear a single word about it, end quote. Unless you tap into the independent media, of which this platform is a component. We tell people what they need to know, and it's not what they want to hear. And this brings us to Donald J. Trump. The election on November 5th, 2024 is beyond historical. But where it gets to be downright monumental and earth-shattering is what we do with the election. The players, the puppets on the other side will say that those in the Trump movement, the freedom movement, are going to persecute them. No, not at all. But we're also not going to turn our other cheek. We can forgive, but we're not going to forget. And we're especially not going to forget about restitution of the rule of law. Those that did not criminally violate the rule of law and oppress others, censor others, strip people of their rights, they have nothing to worry about. But if they did, then in a fair court of law, the rule of law will be instituted and penalties delivered. That's not persecuting anybody. It's holding them accountable to the rule of law. It is important that to square our constitutional republic, those that have violated the Constitution, those that have violated the rule of law and try to use it in as their own lawfare persecution of others, be held accountable. It's imperative that the laws that are on the books, allowing legal immigration and holding those that are involved in illegal immigration, including those involved in NGOs that subverted the rule of law, be held accountable. It's imperative that all those that targeted people for using their First Amendment rights also be held accountable. Those that have inflicted damage on freedom-loving Americans need to be held accountable in a court of law in a fair fashion, and if found guilty, be appropriately sentenced. If some of these individuals were involved in treason-related activities, they need to be prosecuted and be held accountable and the appropriate sentence delivered. That is not being vindictive. It is what we need to do to preserve our constitutional republic for all those generations that are following us at this point in time. We have been victorious as it relates to the election. But there's a much bigger hurdle than the election. That was the first step. But to be ultimately victorious, what we must do is we must push for not saying, okay, well, we're just going to forget about what happened the last 35 years. No. Accountability and transparency. And that, folks, is what the deep state and all of their puppets, from the lowest level puppets to the middle level puppets to the upper middle level puppets to the puppets all the way up to the top of the banking families, fear the most. Because with that accountability and transparency comes the rule of law. Don't sit on the couch. Yes, enjoy the victory that the freedom movement had on November 5th, 2024. But above all, do not become complacent. Because if we do, this demon of the globalist state will rise again much quicker. and put each and every person's freedom in harm's way as they have done the past 35 years. We are available 24/7 at davejanda.com. Extra shows, content, guests, analysis. Please join our premium service content and email service. I go into much greater depth, present information I cannot discuss on public platforms, even at this point in time, because there is overt, not just covert, overt censorship. Please pass this video on to others. Join us. I do another 4 to 5 video format shows every week that our subscribers say is for 30 cents a day, $9 a month. Sign up for a month. It just renews every month. You don't have to sign up for a year or 2 years. It's every month. And it renews until you say, okay, I'm going to hold off, but I don't know why you would. Because what our subscribers say is our content puts you many months, years ahead of the curve. Do yourself a favor. If you're not a member of our Freedom family, join. Join. Because, as I said, this is not going to be smooth sailing. And what we do with our information is make it so that your sailing is smoother and less tumultuous and much less turbulent. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.